Hi, I'm Dee Dee Bass-Wilbon.
And I'm Dina Bass-Williams, and we are the Bass Sisters.
And this is Policy and Pound Cake.
I am so ready for the weekend.
So am I. I cannot wait. Looking for it. It's been a good week, but a long week.
A long week. And we are excited because we're going to jump right into a conversation with our good friend, Christian Watson. He's a brilliant young mind. You want to follow him.
Okie dokie.
So we are so excited to have Christian Watson join us.
How are you, Christian?
How are you guys? I'm doing all right.
Great. Well, great.
So, Christian, you are with a group. In full disclosure, we love working with our friends at Color Us United.
We do.
So excited to hear about what y'all are working on, what you do. Tell us a little bit about Color Us United.
So basically, we're a 501c3 nonprofit group that is fighting to advance the principles of a colorblind society. We believe that America was based on the value of all of us as individuals, as human beings, and not necessarily on our value as people who have certain races or certain ethnicities or certain other immutable characteristics that some groups in society want to define all of us by. And so we go into institutions and we fight mentalities like this that have overtaken corporate America, overtaken other industries as well, that do try to pit people against each other on the basis of their supposed class, their status group, their skin color, or whatever. We want us all to be united, regardless of our differences. Not that our differences are not important, but they're not significant enough to cause us to have a wedge in our society. Mm-hmm. That's the message we're trying to drive home.
Now, how did you come to join Color Us United, Christian?
Well, so I was a junior in college. I remember the day very distinctly. And I was talking a lot about critical race theory because I had actually experienced, I had a run-in with critical race theory before it blew up, before President Trump signed his executive order. In the fall of 2020, I was on the debate team. At least a few months before this happened, I was on the debate team. And my debate team, like most collegiate debate teams, are actually overrun with people that were hardcore left-leaning people. Now, this normally wouldn't be a problem. The debate team is supposed to be a place where there's people of different thoughts. However, these people on my team did not want there to be different thoughts. And in many of their arguments, they quoted critical race theorists. They quoted people like Derek Bell and Kimberly Crenshaw. And so I was getting a full dose of these people before anyone else really in the public sphere had heard of them. And so after I had left the team and President Trump signed his executive order to get rid of critical race theory in the federal government, I got excited. So I made a video about it, and I talk about it a lot in my podcast. The spring of 2021, I testified before the New Hampshire state legislature about critical race theory. And then in that April, a contact of mine put me in touch with the people who were organizing Color Us United, and the rest is history.
Excellent. Okay. So, Christian, that's how you came to Color Us United, but how did you come to understand that you were, in fact, a conservative thinker? You know, Dee Dee and I, obviously, we're Black, we're conservatives, and some people find that shocking. Some people, both Black and white, actually find that shocking. How did you? We don't find it shocking.
No.
How did you come to your conservative worldview?
That's an interesting question. When I get asked it, I always have to go back in my mind because there wasn't one moment. I think it was a combination of things. When I was younger, like 12, 13, I always enjoyed watching Bill O'Reilly on Fox News. And that was no one else in my family had done that. In fact, the fact that I was doing that actually made people's eyes go up, like, well, why are you watching that? But I was a stickler for like switching through news channels. I would watch CNN a lot, a heck of a lot actually. I actually used to be a fan of Don Lemon actually before he went crazy. I used to be a huge fan of Don Lemon. I watched all the channels, but I happened to watch Fox a lot. And one time I remember Bill O'Reilly was doing a monologue about crime in Black America. And it was 2014, actually. And that monologue, he was ripped apart by it. The View did a big segment on him. And I remember the things he was saying. And I didn't have any knowledge at that time of statistics, but I did have experience. And I did understand, I have experienced in my life certain black youth who behave in a certain way, who didn't have a father. In my own family, there are people who didn't have a father, and I had seen the outcomes happen in their life. So there must be something to this. And then as the years went on and I matured, I began reading more. I began going outside of TV and researching more. I began going to seminars hosted by free market type organizations when I was 17. And through those, I cultivated a love of philosophy. And at that point, by the time I was 18, I think all of these ingredients had combined and baked together into a nice, well put together cake, so to speak. And that was the foundation of my beliefs. And so I thought to myself, well, as I go through college, I'm certain, I'm just 18, I'm certain I will change what I think, and these professors will have a good impact on me. Well, okay, 3 years later, out of college, 4 years later, actually, out of college, my professors really only hardened my foundations. They only really reinforced them, because a lot of them were saying things that I knew for a fact to be false. A lot of them were treating black folks in America that I knew for a fact were destructive. So that's really how I came to think all of this stuff, through experience.
I like the way that you said, and Dean and I, we talk about this all the time, the marketplace of ideas and not being in a silo. The fact that you, at such a very young age, when you said 12, I'm like watching the shows that you're watching, but the fact that you were watching both, you were watching CNN, you were watching Fox, you were reading, you were listening and getting your news from so many different sources. And that's really very important. And I hope that, you know, young people like yourself are listening and watching, and that they're doing the same thing, getting that information from lots of different sources and making their decisions.
Absolutely. It makes you a critical thinker. And,
Absolutely.
And that's whether you're on the left or on the right, we have to be critical thinkers. And
Absolutely.
so that's why we really love consuming your content, working with you and Colorists United. We have a video that we are going to show of a teacher in Canada. And I think not just any teacher in Canada, but this is a transgender teacher in Canada. And okay, so Christian, you're familiar with this teacher. Explain to us, first of all, what is happening. Also, is this just one example? My hope is that we're making like this is the only thing, this is the only place where this is happening. This is not it happening all over the place. First of all, explain to us, what did we just see? What did we just see?
So you saw a teacher called Kayla Lemieux, who teaches at the Oakville Trafalgar High School, which is 30 miles outside of Toronto, Canada, wear huge prosthetic breasts into a workshop class on the grounds of gender inclusion and expression. Now, there are many different directions to go with this, but one of the reasons why this is happening is because, especially here in Western civilization, we've lost the meaning of education. And this is not a recent phenomenon. This is just the latest instance of what's been going on for a very long time. I think this goes all the way back to the debates over, should we have intelligent design in education over evolution? Should we have sex ed in education over abstinence-only education? All of these debates that we've seen throughout history kind of reflect the same point. We've lost the point of education. The point of education is not to instill an ideology into a child. It's not to teach them how what to think, so to speak. It is to teach them how to think, and also teach them how to appreciate reality. Teach them how to appreciate the world around us. America was birthed from the Enlightenment, and in the Enlightenment, one of the most important principles was our ability to reason, to think through things, and to be a rational person. And education is meant to help that, because not all of us we're all born with reason, but we have to train it like a muscle. But in our education system today, that's not happening. What's happening is you have things like the 1619 Project, which are being taught to people. You've got this kind of stuff happening in Canada, but you have stuff like this happening in America as well. Not exactly like this, but you have teachers asking their classrooms, in some cases in elementary school or even in middle school, to affirm them by using their pronouns. We've seen many examples of this, and some teachers have even been suspended for this kind of behavior. We've lost the point of education. And this is why I really think that the education system in America needs to be completely restructured. We need to have a focus on the basics, number one, ABCs, reading, writing, all that kind of stuff. But then I think, and this is radical, we should teach philosophy, and not in any abstract sense, but we should basically just teach people how to think. How would this situation right here compare to this situation right here? That is going to be a much more valuable resource than teaching someone what their pronouns are. Also, we should also teach, on top of teaching philosophy, financial literacy skills. Some schools do this, not enough do this, not enough do this. We should teach people how to balance a checkbook, how to pay off debt, how to manage money. There are so many different things, practical things we could be teaching people. But right now, the emphasis is largely on indoctrination in public schooling. I can't account for private schools because obviously many private schools have their own curriculum, they set them by themselves. But in public schooling, that's largely what it is. And it's worrying. So this is just a microcosm of the broader issue.
Christian, it's interesting that when you're talking about that we should go back to the basics, because I literally just had this conversation with my 15-year-old daughter. We were talking about math and things like that. And I was like, I really wish that schools would teach those types of things, finance, how to balance a checkbook, everyday life things. But Christian, as a parent, what I just saw was very disturbing to me. When you talk about teaching fifth graders and suspending fifth graders and kindergartners for not addressing their classmates using a pronoun and things like that, as a parent, what do you think parents should be doing in these situations? Because our mom and dad were very involved in our education, coming to schools, coming to meetings. What do you think parents need to be doing today to stop this indoctrination and telling our kids that they can choose what they want to be?
Well, so I'll go with the harder answer first. The harder answer is I think people should homeschool their kids. I really think if they have the ability to homeschool their kids, not everyone has the ability to. My mother couldn't do it, which is why I went to the public school system. But if you have the ability to homeschool your kids, I would homeschool your kids. What's happening right now, what's really been happening for a long time, this is just, again, the latest episode of the same series, is that there are political interests vested in directing your child's mind the direction they want it to go into. This happens in many cases in many places. School boards are political institutions. State legislatures who set the curriculum are also political institutions. And I don't want a child education to become a political battleground for people who think they know best for that child. The parent is who knows best for that child, not a politician and not a school board person. So the only way to reinforce totally is to homeschool your kids. Now, if you can't do that, there are other ways to get involved. I think, obviously calling the teacher all the time, calling the principal, asking your child to be transparent about what's happening in their classroom, even asking, can I go observe the classroom for a day or two? There are all kinds of things. If you want to be really aggressive and really hands-on, there are all kinds of things you can do to sort of have a moderating influence on some of this stuff. But ultimately, it starts at home. You got to trust that your child has the right set of values and principles, and that the ideology of a teacher or a state legislature or a school board won't compromise them. And if you believe they're enough to compromise them, then I think the onus is to make sure those values remain strong. And however that happens, whether it be home discussions or whatever, that's what I would do if I was putting myself in those shoes, in those kind of shoes. I was a student not too long ago, and I really had to make sure that what I believed was solid, or at least that I was open to different opinions, but I wasn't open to being directed in any which way. And that came from coming from a household of people who worked very hard, having a single mother who worked 3 jobs to support me and to make sure that I could go through school. I saw these skills and I saw these things modeled in front of me, and I reflected my behavior. I think that's probably the most important thing for a child to see, to have a reference point, so to speak, of good behavior, because that will likely have a bigger impression than what happens at the school.
Excellent. Now, Christian, we'd love for you to talk to us a little bit about some of the campaigns that Colorist United is working on, past things that you've worked on. Dee Dee and I just, over the last couple of days have been digging into some things as it relates to corporate wokeism and all those kinds of things. We know that y'all are on the front lines in those conversations. Also, very interested in the American Express campaign. I think that one has passed, but would love for you to tell us about what that was all about and the things that y'all are working on now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so on American Express, we were basically looking at how they were treating employees in context of their diversity, equity, and inclusion program. And we found many things. We found that American Express was preferentially, making minority quotas to hire certain people on the basis of their skin color as opposed to their merit. We found that American Express was actually interrogating and silencing people like Nick Williams, who was one of our whistleblowers, who didn't give people lines of credit if they were minorities, because apparently not doing that was racist. Well, American Express is doing a lot of just really nasty and bad things, not really caring about merit, not really caring about the facts of any given case, but caring about, corporate boardrooms. It's so bad that it's just, there's so many things that we found out that it's just astounding to us and something we can't talk about. But what's happening in American Express, who spends $1 billion a year on DEI, on all of that kind of stuff, and has a 15% bonus, according to their SEC filing, for employees that go ahead and promote their DEI initiatives. So basically, they're valuing promoting political agendas above actually serving the customers. What we have found out is just absolutely crazy, but it's going on in other places in corporate America. Bank of America is doing it. Chase Bank is doing it. All these places are doing it. So our attempt with the American Express campaign was really just to show, there are people that don't want their politics mixed with their finances. There are people that don't want to be preached at in this kind of way. And I think we did a very good job with that. I think that we brought out some very important information. We had many press conferences. We had American Express responded to one of our advertisements that we worked together with an organization and denied all of the charges, which of course they would deny them because it doesn't look good for them. And I think I'm really proud of how we've done.
Dee and I are very clear about the concept that we don't believe in promoting people based on race. We do believe in promoting based on merit, but we also do believe that it's important. Like we want to see more Black women in corporate America, right, in the C-suite. How do we achieve that without falling into this kind of wokeism? And is that even something? And this is an area where you and I and the Bass sisters may disagree, but is that something worthy of achieving? And if it is, how do we achieve it? Possibly starting back from the beginning, parents, children, education, taking the right classes in school so that you can be fit to be the CEO. Mm-hmm. But we celebrate it when we see Black women achieving the C-suite the right way. Right. We want to see more of that. So how do you feel about that?
Well, personally, I want the best people for the job. I don't care what skin color they are. I don't care what their backgrounds are. I don't really have a personal attachment to the race of the people who are serving me in those areas. So personally, I'm not even sure if we should be trying to achieve any kind of racial makeup in any direction. I just don't see, personally, for me, I don't see the relevance of it. But I do see how a young Black girl or young Black man who are in certain communities who see certain representations of people who look like them could be inspired to go ahead and pursue that. I can see that. I don't think that's a good source of inspiration, though, because the skin color of people who have achieved things does not really take into account how they achieve those things. What is their character like? What was their life like? That person could have had an entirely different life experience than you, could have had entirely different opportunities than you, and that could give you a false impression of what you can do. I think it's important for every individual to look inside of themselves and figure out, what am I good at? And then set themselves on that path. And if there are people that look like them in that industry that they want to go into, that's an added bonus, I guess, for some people. For me, I would look more at their character, and I would be inspired by that. For example, I'll give you an example in my personal life. The great Walter Williams, who passed away not so long ago, unfortunately, rest his soul. But he was a great economist, really, over at George Mason University, up there with Thomas Sowell. Walter Williams' commentaries certainly inspired me, not because he was black, because he was brilliant and heterodox, and he just didn't care what anyone else thought. Those are character traits that I've seen replicated in every race. And there are many other examples of this kind of stuff as well. So I don't think that representation per se should be the goal. I think that cultivating skills and excellence should be the goal. And the representation follows from that. Okay, no problem with
it. Okay, all right. Well, Christian, this has been so much fun.
We love chatting with you, Christian.
Really do.
Oh, thank you.
And we're going to make sure that everyone knows how to find you. If you go to colorusunited.org and click the, I think the fellowship or team bios, you can find Christian's bio and how to follow him on social media. You definitely want to follow this young man. He has a lot of wise things to say. So we appreciate you, Christian. Thank you. And we'll have to have you back very soon.
Yes, please. Absolutely.
Okay, Christian is awesome.
He is wise beyond his years.
He really is. He really, truly is. And I enjoy talking to him because he always had, and like I said, I really did like the fact that he said he listens to so many different,
media outlets.
Yeah,
absolutely. And he is a critical thinker. Mm-hmm. And even in places where we may not agree with him, I so respect his opinion because it's well thought out. It's not because somebody told him to believe this.
Right.
It's because he's reasoned through it for himself. And that's all you can ask for. So brilliant young mind.
So, all right. Well, thank you guys for joining us. Make sure you like, share, and follow, and tell your friends about us so they can join us the next time. In case you missed them, you can listen to archived episodes of Policy and Pound Cake, link in bio.